Oh, I mean, and there's one here. Everywhere you go, the sausage is on the step in the sun. That's not why we're here today, but we all love dogs. It's reflections of a world gone mad. And I had a chat with a friend this morning who is one of the most sage people I know. I love her. And she was saying, what is it that every time Keir Starmer cocks up the country, he then unleashes some new initiative. So it's like, I've just absolutely single handedly killed private education, but here's a voucher for free ice creams over the summer. And that's what it feels like. It feels like this never ending stream of I'm going to take with one hand and give with the other, but what I'm giving you I'm going to have back in about 10 minutes anyway. And I was like, well, that's because he doesn't know how to run the country. And he spent all these years in opposition when he wasn't being a barrister, standing on the stage. And I mean, he just loves standing on the stage and his sneery voice. And I know that's personal, but it's true. It is his recent performance in Parliament questions when Bradley Thomas spoke about the increasing costs that hospices are facing. And let's remind ourselves that hospices are where people go to die, and they receive end of life care that, you know, it's a subject that I find really difficult to talk about without getting emotional. Having experienced hospice care, it should never, ever, ever, ever be facing any kind of financial hardship. I know a lot of them do, but it really shouldn't. If we can't give human beings the end of life care that they deserve, our society is well and truly. So he's asked a question as to whether he will make hospices exempt from the national insurance hikes. And he doesn't answer. He sneers and he shouts and he deflects and projects. And he doesn't say yes or no. He doesn't answer the question in hand. And I know I spoke about this last week, but when I was talking to my friend, I said, this is why we don't get an answer from him, because he doesn't have an answer. And he can't face the reality of the decisions he's made because he doesn't know how to be a prime minister. He knows how to be a barrister and he knows how to attack. But he doesn't know that to be a prime minister, there's an awful lot more than standing up in the Houses of Commons and, being the big man with the speech. You've actually got to work with people. There's got to be forwards and backwards. There's got to be growth mindset. I know I talk about this all the time, growth mindset, but it's so important. You don't run a country without recognising the needs of all the people in it, not just a few here and there. And he's lost in his own identity. He doesn't know who he is or what he is. He's no longer a working man. And he wants to be middle class. I mean, I think he wants to be upper class. But he's definitely not where he wants to be. But he keeps sort of throwing in where he came from, as though that gives him relatability, as he goes back to his multi-million-pound house in London or number 10 and doesn't have a financial worry in the world. How is that relatable to us? And the rest of the party just don't know how to conduct themselves. They've not worked out yet that to try and tag on a free safari to a work trip is not appropriate. They haven't worked out yet that by asking the taxpayer to pay for a clause in their rental agreement so their dog can live in their house is not acceptable when we're telling pensioners that they can't have the winter fuel allowance. They haven't worked out yet that, whilst on a combined salary of £400,000 a year, they can have free tickets to go and see Sabrina Carpenter. They haven't worked out yet that by asking your mate to borrow his however many £1 million flat so that your own son can revise for his GCSEs privately and without any kind of distraction is going to piss off an entire demographic of parents who have just had their kids' education pulled from out of them. And on that whole sort of class thing, there's this real Bridget Phillipson stoking up the class wars and Rachel Reeves stoking up the class wars. And Keir's sort of sitting in the back watching them go. It's a little bit like feeding, lambs to the slaughter. It's like, go on, girls, go on. But you'll notice that he doesn't really back them up because he's not comfortable with where he is. And the hatred and venom that come from this party to a sector of society who contribute as much to every other sector of society with their income tax, yet because they've chosen different ways to do things, is just astounding. I mean, I've never seen pockets of our own society hated so much. And yet here we are, he's our Prime Minister. And he's not a nice person. And I mean, my own personal opinions of him are I think he's really weak. I think he's. Where did I see somebody called him slimy? That was on the Channel 4 news programme where they did a. Oh, what's it called? It's not Forum. Oh, God, I need to go and put another patch on. But they were asking people what they thought of the Labour Party and Keir Starmer. Someone said slimy Starmer. I was like, yeah. But, you know, I mean, I can't look at him and not think of Penfold from Danger Mouse. But I don't see anyone that I would, you know, ask to babysit my kids, let alone around the country. And I realise that, you know, Boris wasn't great, but I think Rishi Sunak, now that he is no longer Prime Minister, people are going, yeah, that was a lot better, wasn't it? And certainly politically, I think the Conservatives did a relatively dreadful job on a lot of things, and certainly within the last 2 years it was an absolute bloody nightmare, but they also had a lot of undoing to do. But you didn't hear Rishi going, it was all Boris's fault, it was all Liz Truss's fault. It was just, this is a bit crap, but I've got to make the best of a bad job and I'm going to do that. He was able to park it and move forwards because he did know how to conduct himself. And there's always going to be slips. I mean, you know, we talk about the MPs and the expenses scandals. Well, it's a bit like expecting a school of kids and not having an expulsion. Society dictates that behaviour is never going to be consistent throughout. But we're not learning, are we? On any of the parties, we're not learning. And so, to my conversation with my friend this morning, and why is it that Labour sort of like throw out these new initiatives like sweets, and they do it, you know, it's literally like somebody phones them up and says, oh, you've dropped an absolute bollock on, you know, disability benefits, and he goes, right, okay, let's give everyone a free car then. So that'll be the headline that day, and then it'll go, oh, but it's only got half a wheel and you can have it for every third Monday in a month that has a Z in it. And it's like, oh, okay, so it was a headline for that day, but actually it had no weight or no merit. You just thought of it because you're thinking on the spot, because you haven't actually worked out what this takes. And I've got fatigue. I've got Labour Party fatigue. I don't know anyone that doesn't. I genuinely, even the most staunch Labour supporters are finding it hard to defend this lot. And I don't know what the viable alternative is. You know, everyone thinks I'm a Labour basher, therefore I must be a fully signed up Reform member or a fully signed up Conservative member or Green, what have you. I'm not. I really don't know what the alternative is. But what I do know is this is not working. This couldn't be as far from working as we could try. So something somewhere has to give, and I think the first thing that has to give is they need to be out. Now obviously we're not going to have a snap election, are we? So there needs to be a robust, strengthened opposition to hold this lot to account. And every time they come out with one of their lies, like we're not going to put your council tax up, they are actually held to account. And Sir Lindsay Hoyle, I mean, if it was me, I would strip the Sir from that name. Lindsay Hoyle needs to have a refresher course on his role, because at the minute I feel he's not fulfilling his role, and I feel like Keir Starmer is allowed to get away with daylight robbery every single day, and that really annoys me. I think the dogs have gone to sleep now. This is like their bedtime story, hearing me rant on or muse on about the cock-ups in the political world. We are asleep. Right. See you later.